Okay, David. First of all, welcome to my podcast, and thank you for agreeing to be part of this. And I mean,
So
I
thank you very much.
I love your tweets, and I think you're the one behind the tweets, is it?
That's right. Yes, it's me, and
I mean,
I've been doing it now for about just over 12 months.
ah, I mean they're really witty, and I mean, it's so updated to the latest cricket scenario. I mean, you could just see today's match, and then I see your tweet. I'm like, okay, this guy's watching the game, and
Yeah, I mean we all are here in Iceland. We're very interested in the global game. We follow it very closely, and yeah, and we do make great efforts to actually focus on fan engagement, as you say. So that's one of the main objectives of Iceland Cricket is not just to be a traditional board, but to actually reach out there
of course,
to
of
the
course.
fans. We are fans, so we want to express that.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you so much for taking out time on a Friday. I mean, it's festive season, so you know it's better to get it over with Friday morning. David, I'll come back to your tweets soon. I mean, I'm not gonna take long. It's not gonna take long. So I just wanted to first start with the cricket, which is going on. I mean, there's so much happening all over the world, and as a viewer, purely as a viewer, I mean, I live in Dubai. I'm an Indian. I'm an avid consumer of cricket from every corner. I mean, we watch the IPL. We have the India matches. You have the Pakistan matches. You have Australia thrashing West Indies, and I mean
Mhm.
now I think Australia is going to travel to England. So there's a lot of cricket which is going to happen. Australia is going to come to India. So amidst all of this and the way, so I just want to put my focus on the discussion of this new word which has been coined in last say 12 months. It's called Baz-Ball. I mean, I
Mm.
call it like whack and crack. I mean, that's what you go
Yeah,
out
I
there,
mean,
whack the ball, come out. But in a way, I mean, in the beginning, I'll just finish my sentence. So in the beginning, when Brent McCullum was announced as the coach of England for the Test team, and I think it was around the same time when Rahul Dravid took over for India. And
mhm.
I've seen a lot of tweets. You sometimes feel bad. Okay, why is Nasir Hussain being so mean when he says that India is being very timid with their approach in T20s? But now when you see, after the end of the Test series with Pakistan, I don't think there is any reason to doubt why Nasir Hussain or a Michael Vaughan. I mean, Michael Vaughan tweets stuff, and us as Indians we get rattled. I mean, like, what is he tweeting? But to be very honest, as a
Mhm.
viewer, like when I look at it, like, I mean, India played one maiden over in every World Cup match in the T20 World Cup. India had like one maiden over at least. You cannot play maidens in a T20 game. And England is playing run a ball in test matches. So I just wanted to have this reaction from you that what do you think is India doing wrong? First, I'm talking about India, then we can go ahead and this whole Bazball approach. And do you think it's blown
Mhm.
out of proportion? Do you think when England travels to Australia, this is not going to work?
Well, okay. I mean, there's loads of things in there. Let's start with the Indian part, because obviously they played the World Cup T20. They've lost to England by 10 wickets,
Yeah.
and if you look at that match as an indicator of what is perhaps going wrong for India, you look at for instance at the top three. The top three is your essentially your test lineup. You've got KL
Yes.
Rahul, you've got Sharma, you've got Kohli, all great players, all at one point or another have produced in all forms of the game.
Correct.
But if you look at how they batted in that match, they were scoring runnable in that
Yeah.
semi-final against England.
Yes.
Kohli, I think he got 50 or 40 in the end. Um, so he's used up one third of the balls, scored
Yeah.
just over run a ball. Okay, so India end up with a score of what was it, 160 something, I
Yeah.
forget. But what you were left with was a situation where your power hitters, your Yadavs, your Pandias, they're coming in. It doesn't even matter if they have a strike rate of 200. You're not going to get to a team score of 190, 200 that is going to
Yes.
put England under a lot of pressure. So what happens in response is you've got Butler and Hales, not test players, really, not traditionally. They have
Yeah.
played some test cricket, of course, but they're not in the test team as it stands. They come out, they're striking at 160 to 200.
Yes. Yeah.
Successfully, consistently. So, I mean, that is sort of the essence of Bazball, is that in T20 cricket, they're coming out and scoring at 10 and over.
Yeah.
When conditions suit, obviously. The final was a bit different with the added pressure and the bowlers. It was a somewhat more bowler-friendly conditions against Pakistan. But in that match, this was a game where a pass score was 190, 200. That was needed
Correct.
to put England under pressure. So what I think this boils down to, okay, so are there players in India maybe who should be batting higher up the order? Are there players in India who maybe shouldn't be in the T20 team? Perhaps, even great players. Does it boil down to the issue that you have a coach in Rahul Dravid who was not traditionally regarded as being a T20 player?
Yeah.
These are all points that I think India need to explore. And you can add a further point to this. Indian players, they play in the IPL. Where else do they play? So when they go abroad into other conditions, are they accustomed to those conditions? Can they adapt?
I think Ravi Shastri, I think mentioned this. I mean, yeah, I totally understand. Commentators are not. I mean, Indian commentators are not allowed to speak things negatively about Indian cricket. I mean, that is how probably they're contracted. But I think somewhere Ravi Shastri had mentioned that not being able to adapt, and yeah, I mean, India doesn't play anywhere. I mean, the ones who play are probably, you see a Yuvraj Singh, but they have to. I mean, I think the policy is you take an international retirement and you're not contracted centrally, and that is how it works. But then you don't play for your country again. I mean, I got your point. I understand. I think it's sorry. I somehow I have this habit of cutting conversations, which is not great. But again, David, what you said, what I wanted to add to this is, do you think? I mean, because India last won the T20 World Cup in 2007. And that was the time when IPL was launched, and even when Michael Vaughan tweeted, it burnt me for a day when he said that India have been the biggest underachievers in cricket. But then, he was not wrong. Now the things which I say, I mean, people might not like it, but do you think, the team selection is based on the reputation and okay, if you see the law of averages, yeah, I mean, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, amazing averages, lovely. I mean, you can't beat that. Do you think, like what happened to the great Sachin Tendulkar when, at his later part of the career, like you could not drop him and you could not ask him to take a break. We are at a situation where we have 10 IPL teams. You only play 4 overseas players, and we are not able to field a new playing 11 where, I mean, it is totally possible to find a guy like Alex Hales from ball one, go, whack it, come out. But instead, we play the same team. Don't you think we play the same team for a test match? I mean, right now, I mean, as you said, we're playing, top 4 are our test batsmen. And to be very honest, this is the team which is going to probably play the ODI World Cup as well. And this is the team which has played the T20 World Cup as well. And yeah, I mean, this is something which, do you think it is the selectors who are not able to probably take that call, or, the reputation precedes them, or, it's too difficult to drop a Virat Kohli?
I think there's a lot of that, to be honest. I mean, it's not for me to say that Virat Kohli shouldn't be in the Indian team, but I do feel when it comes to the 50-over World Cup that maybe having your test lineup is not so much of a disadvantage, because I feel, 50 overs, you can take your time, you can pace it, and you can score still 350, even 400 with that sort of approach. So for me, India have probably a much better chance in that format than they do currently in a T20 World Cup. That said, they've now got they've got a couple of years to rebuild, and maybe in T20 cricket to sort of reflect on their approach. And I think they can actually draw quite a few lessons from how England went about this in 2015. So, I mean, people talk about Bazball starting now. Bazball, whatever you want to call it, it started when McCullum came in, people say. But that's in Test cricket. You actually have to go back to the 2015 World Cup when England had a terrible performance, basically playing like a Test team, a bad Test team.
They had to drop Alistair Cook. I mean,
there was a
Ali was opening the batting.
All of those kind of things. And basically, England were years behind the way in which cricket has evolved in the one-day game. So Owen Morgan came in. Over the period of the next 4 years, actually very quickly, the whole batting lineup was transformed so that England were very disappointed if they never made 300, even 350. They've scored 400, almost 500 earlier this year in one game against the Netherlands.
Yes.
So suddenly England are sort of transformed. They realize they actually do have the players in county cricket that can deliver these run rates. And I'm sure the same is true in Indian cricket. And by 2019, they win the World Cup in ODI cricket. So within 4 years, they've gone from being arguably one of the worst one-day teams in the world to the best, or the joint best. They were a bit lucky to win that final, but ultimately they proved themselves that they were actually they were one of the best teams in the world at that time.
Thank you, David. So apart from this, all the Baz-Ball talk which we have, I mean, this is lovely, and I think this is a mindset. I mean, come on, the least you could do is at least get 4 and over. I think this is something which I agree as well. I mean, playing on those wickets in Pakistan where, 2 teams score 600, and, so that is also something which we saw. We saw a bold declaration from Ben Stokes, and he said it in an interview that he will not shy away to probably, declare without batting. Like, he wants to go for results. And that is something which I remember back in the day, probably 5 to 6 years back when Kohli was captain. He had that approach for a few matches. He went for those wins, but we didn't really win a lot. But then we started winning some. We won in Australia. I mean, India couldn't do it in England. But this new approach from England where, you are going to tell the opposition that, okay, this is the score. You have 1.5 days. You have 350 on the board. Come and get it. So this is an approach where, I mean, you could lose. I mean, Pakistan could have won the game. They could have won the game. But, it's a chance you take. Otherwise, I mean, you have 2 batsmen, Harry Brooks scoring 100 after 100. And, at the end of the day, you could, I remember the test series where Australia came to Pakistan and they could barely, I mean, there was no bowling. And in the 3rd test match, finally, I mean, after some beautiful spells from Stark and Pat Cummins, Australia could win the match. But the first 2, I mean, everyone got hundreds. Like Pakistan, Australia got hundreds, and then Pakistan batsmen, they piled up runs. So the question which I'm coming to at is, this is again, it's not a question basically. So I have seen this discussion happen that should we take out 1 day from the test matches? Should we make it 4-day tests? Should we also reduce, say, 50 over games to 40? What does it do for the audience? For guys like us, I'm ready to watch a game for 5 days, but it's not lasting 5 days. So what do I do? I mean, probably they are not getting the crowds. And what is your thought? I mean, this is something which, purely basis entertainment and viewing,
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, then maybe there is an argument for reducing tests, but in duration. But for me, tests should remain at 5 days. Let's take that first test against Pakistan. England beat Pakistan in Pindi. That went to the wire. It could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Pakistan could have won that game. Some tests still do go 5 days, especially if the weather intervenes. And I don't think people are looking at this Bazball approach and saying necessarily that they're going to copy it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, most test teams around the world are scoring 3.5 runs and over. And there's a lot of reasons for doing this. And I think that the thing about test cricket is that all different approaches can be accommodated. You can have a player who can score 100 or 300 balls to save the game.
Yeah.
Fantastic innings. You can have a Harry Brook coming in and scoring a century off 80 balls. Fantastic innings.
Yeah.
In their own right. And that's the diversity of test cricket. I mean, you make a point about ODI cricket, whether it is reduced from 50 overs to 40 overs. I mean, I think in time, as many people have said, the danger is that there is no ODI cricket, just because there simply isn't time in the calendar.
I was actually going to ask you this question that, with so many leagues, which even, I mean, I've seen a lot of talks, a lot of chats where, people are not interested in ODI cricket much. I mean, see, for me, I mean, I love test cricket, but that love has actually started coming from not so long ago. Test cricket used to be very boring, but somehow off late, because I think people have started giving importance. Test cricket, yes. I mean, as you said, I don't want to tinker with test cricket, but, again, I saw some tweet, somebody tweeted that, all the runs India scores or any other team scores, stat padding during bilateral series, playing 5-match ODI series. Do you think those ODI matches fading? Because I don't remember watching a great ODI series for probably since the last World Cup. I mean, okay, pandemic, keeping the pandemic aside, I mean, we are seeing T20s, we are seeing test matches, but, that love for ODIs is suddenly disappearing. And I really don't know. Is it like, am I not interested in ODI cricket, or do I think the ODI cricket could be shorter? That is something which,
I think you make a good point. And I think one series that sort of exemplified this was after the T20 World Cup. England played 3 ODIs against Australia.
I lost all of them. Yeah.
But I didn't get the feeling that anyone was engaging in this series, or even really that the England team particularly cared about the loss. This is sort of an Ashes contest. It's between the Ashes nations, England and Australia. And if people aren't interested in those kind of series, then you've got to question whether there's maybe some kind of cricketing overload and whether these series are going to continue in the future. Now, we know, though, that ODI cricket isn't going to disappear, because the ICC have scheduled out the World Cups to the year 2032. So we know at least that there's going to be the next 10 years of ODI cricket. The question is whether it's only really played in the build-up to those competitions. And for, say, 3 of the 4 years, it's just a case of playing T20 cricket, Test cricket as well, in the windows between the sort of the franchise leagues.
Correct. So, David, I mean, apart from the ODI cricket and the Test cricket, where, I mean, the losing interest of the public, and I mean, today I read something where IPL, I mean, they're going to introduce something called the impact player. I mean, so that is going to, so that was something very interesting. At least these are a few things which keep you interested. But having said that, because of the pandemic, the situation is such that you had a T20 World Cup in 2021, you had a World Cup in 2022, you have a 50-over World Cup in 2023, and you have a T20 World Cup again in 2024. So this is something which, do you think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, of course, you miss one World Cup because of the pandemic, but is it too many World Cups? Is it taking away the novelty factor of, Australia won the previous World Cup last year. We forgot about it. Like, I mean,
it's true. It could be. I mean, and let's not forget the World Test Championship is in there too. In that
Yes.
So that's sort of 5 world championships in 4 years, something like that. Maybe this is the case. Maybe it's too much. I mean, I remember when I was growing up in sort of the 90s, we only had the main World Cup, the ODI World Cup, and you used to have to wait 4 years for it to come around, like the Football World Cup. So it was a big event. Maybe now there's not quite the same level of anticipation. I don't know.
But you think as a viewer, are you consuming too much cricket? I mean, you switch channels. You have a
Yeah,
women's league. You have the Big
this
Bash.
is it.
You have two test series going on. You have a one-day match being played somewhere.
Uh-huh. I mean, speaking just personally, I find I have to prioritize the cricket that I
Yeah.
focus on. So I haven't watched any of the Big Bash at all, other than when Sydney Thunder scored 15. I tuned in then. But I watch some Test cricket, some T20 cricket. I follow obviously the cricket that's going on in Iceland in the summer. I follow some domestic cricket in England because I'm originally from England, and I follow some IPL, some PCL. And then I
Yeah.
intently focus if there's a World Cup. That's how I go about it. But I mean, you could literally be watching cricket 365 days of the year. There is so much going on. So I don't think anyone can actually give their attention to all of this.
True. One last question. Probably, you might have a diplomatic answer for this. Um, so see, I mean, in our part of the world, from where I come from, India, I mean, cricket is the biggest, and with every brand associated with cricket benefits massively. So what I want to say is, because of so much cricket, are we overvaluing stuff? Are we overselling things to the consumer with a belief that, something which the organizers believe that, okay, this is gonna fetch me amazing returns and this is amazing, but
Mhm,
are we overdoing cricket? Because I mean, Ben Stokes took retirement from one day internationals because he could not
mhm,
play everywhere, and that was a format which, I mean, he has already won the World Cup. You can't have Kohli play everything. I mean, so I mean, coming back to what we were discussing a while ago, are we overselling things? Are we doing too much with cricket? Are we not sticking to the simple old fashioned way of conducting a league? I mean, right now South Africa has a league coming up where IPL
yeah.
owners have stake. You already have something in Abu Dhabi, and I mean, God knows. I mean, already there's
Mhm,
PSL. They have been People watch a lot of PSL, so you can't have players who play PSL come to play IPL at the same time. So you have
mhm.
like 12 months of cricket. So again, it's kind of the same question. But do you think, as consumers, you are being oversold cricket everywhere? Your advertisements. Okay, I mean, yeah, there is football as well, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've answered your own question, really. I mean, quantity is not necessarily quality, is it? We've seen more and more abundant cricket around the world, and very few players these days, unless they're young cricketers, can actually play all three international formats, T20,
Yeah,
ODI, Test. We're not seeing many people doing that.
correct.
So if you are trying to do that, I mean, there is a big danger of sort of burnout, or you get to a late 20s, early 30s, like Ben Stokes is now, and you have to say, what am I going to prioritize in the short term? Now, I mean, I think there's a very good chance he's going to unretire and play in the ODI World Cup.
I mean,
But
he's achieved everything. I mean, he's achieved a T20 World Cup. I mean, he
yeah,
was the star. He hit the winning runs. 50 over World Cup, they might just, maybe not now, maybe a couple of years later, they might just win the Test Championship. I mean, in terms of achievements, I mean, it's bigger than anyone. But yeah, I mean, I,
mhm,
I completely agree with you that he could unretire. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think he will. But I mean, just coming back to the question, I mean, I think that there are some danger points that you're sort of hinting at, and that relates to sort of the expansion of leagues like the IPL. Okay, so the IPL is extending its own duration. There's more
yeah,
teams as well now. And now you have this situation where the IPL, the IPL is sort of taking over other franchises by buying those teams. I think this, ultimately, of course, money speaks, doesn't it? That's what we're talking about. We're seeing now massive investment, for instance, in cricket in the United States in the build up to that T20 World Cup. So cricket is going there. franchise cricket is taking off there. Wherever money flows, cricket will be played.
Um, okay, David, I will switch the discussion to some different things. Apart from, all of this we discussed. So this year, when you open Google and search for, say, most runs scored in the year 2022 by individuals in T20s or one day internationals, not Test cricket, you find a lot of players from, not the regular test playing nations who have actually got a lot of runs. You find players from other continents. So the question which I want to ask you now is, what does ICC do now to get, what do you think, because clearly the way test cricket is going, they don't want test cricket to be played in more nations, because South Africa said they cannot play 4-match series, so you are anyways reducing your limit to 6. But how do you expand the game? Say, how do you get a Iceland or a Bermuda regularly? How do you get Kenya is not playing for a long time. They were semi-finalists in 2003 World Cup. I mean, come on. I mean, Scotland, they turn up sometimes. So how do you, if they don't play the T20 World Cup, then where do they play? And do you think, so secondly, do you think to reach out to these guys, do you think like FIFA World Cup, at least for the T20 World Cup, you think we should have a bigger, rather than playing those initial first rounds where West Indies disqualified, they couldn't play in the final pool of teams, do you think the World Cup should start with at least, come on, like 16, whatever, 17, 18 teams possible, so that we know a few more countries? Because as a viewer, you are at the end of the day, those 10 test teams, and you have a Zimbabwe and you have Afghanistan, and that's it. Like, how do we, how does cricket reach out to them? And lastly, the second question is, because of the private leagues all around the world, how, if you don't play the World Cup, if say Iceland doesn't play a World Cup, I will probably not be able to know an Icelandic player. And then probably, if the world knows him, he might get IPL contract and he does better for his nation the year later. So, because I think the next T20 World Cup, I don't know where is it going to be played, but I think the gist of this is, we need more participation, because otherwise it's just the same teams playing everything.
Yeah, I mean, you make several points there. I mean, starting with the point about Test cricket, I do think we're seeing, for all the successes of Bazball and the English Test team and the Australian Test team and the Indian, we're seeing other nations actually really starting to struggle. We're seeing a poor West Indies team now for 2 decades. We're seeing South Africa struggling financially. We're seeing other teams that the ICC have declared to be test teams, like Ireland, Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, barely playing any test cricket. And this is also due to commercial realities, sadly. So I see in the future test cricket continuing, but maybe with a group of 6 nations. That's all, probably. More like it was maybe just after World War II, in the sort of the 1950s, 1960s, when India and Pakistan started to play tests. And then you talked about opening up the game. Well, I think that would be fantastic if the World Cup had more qualifying nations, more nations actually taking part. Now, of course, this depends on calendar availability, space to actually play the fixtures, but it would be fantastic if there were, say, 32 teams competing in the World Cup, a little bit like the Football World Cup, and maybe there would be, say, 8 groups of 4 initially, and all the teams, including the 4 member nations, had to play against nations like, for instance, Germany or Spain, Denmark, maybe Iceland one day. There are strong associate teams out there that people have never even heard about. And, we hear about Scotland, we hear about Netherlands, we hear about Ireland, well, they're a 4-member nation, but we hear about these fringe teams that are kind of almost at the point of being at the level of the 4-member nations, can beat them in one-off games. But there are a lot of teams just at the level below that, that unless they actually get some exposure and can play the better teams, like we saw, for instance, in the early World Cups, where we saw teams like Sri Lanka, teams like Zimbabwe actually playing the big nations, occasionally beating them, then eventually becoming test nations. Unless these associate nations actually get exposure in full World Cups, the game is not going to expand or grow in those nations or further internationally. So I think it would be great if we could have 32 team World Cups, if it was achievable.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. At least if not 32, come on, like 20 at least, come on. I mean, if you are going to play the World Cup in every 2 years, you might as well beat every team on the way to the top.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the best T20 team in the world, England, are you going to be scared playing Germany? Is it going to be bad for you to play Spain? Okay, you might boost your statistics in the process, but actually in T20 cricket, it's the greatest opportunity for the underdog to actually beat a good team.
Exactly.
I think I saw a stat during the recent World Cup that you're 5 times more likely to see an upset in T20 cricket than you are in ODI cricket.
Yeah.
Occasionally we've seen it in ODI cricket. Teams like Kenya, as you mentioned, teams like Ireland in the past have come in and shocked major nations. But it doesn't happen that often. If you look at the recent T20 World Cup, you had Netherlands beating South Africa. You had Ireland beating the champions, England. You had Zimbabwe beating Pakistan. You had Scotland beating the West Indies in the pre-Super 12s. So shocks happen.
Shocks happen.
So that's a great argument for actually expanding the T20 World Cup at least.
Yeah, valid points, and I also feel that in T20 World Cup, especially only for T20 World Cups, not 50 over World Cups, it's because the game right now, it's where the money is, and even when I talk to my friends here who probably grew up watching 50 over cricket, we didn't know what T20 cricket was until probably when someone played the first international match, because in India they used to not play T20, it was only in England. So we never knew because we didn't have the broadcast. So of late, even I have seen that switch. People are just loving T20 cricket and they're actually ready to consume, a lot of matches. Like I've seen my fellow Indians watching totally those group stage matches where probably they have never even heard of those players. So that interest is there. That interest is there because it's only for a few hours. But I feel to get the game, if you want to play in USA, if you want to play a World Cup in USA, and if you want the crowd to cheer for you, you want the people over there to know what the game is about. So probably, this is just an example. If you want to play a World Cup in a T20 World Cup, a T20 match in Brazil, I mean, you need to have that fan base there, and which we clearly don't have. And so, David, I mean, coming to the end of our podcast slowly, I wanted to ask you about Iceland cricket now, which I had told you about. So, please guide us through, what is Iceland cricket's plan, which, I mean, you mentioned in the tweet as well. So what is right now the current structure of the Iceland cricket? And I mean, how many months, how many times a year are you able to play cricket over there with the climatic conditions? I mean, with everything.
So we can play outdoors in Iceland from early to mid-May until mid-September.
Okay.
So roughly 4 months of the year.
That's not bad. Not bad at all. Yeah.
16 to 18 weeks. It's not too bad. And in terms of the structure here, we have now 5 clubs, 5 domestic clubs, and our aspiration is to become an associate member of the ICC. So we can take part in qualifying tournaments for the World Cups. The T20 World Cup is, of course, will be the main focus. And in order to do that, we have to satisfy certain criteria, which we're trying to progress towards. I won't go into sort of all of the technicalities, but a main objective is to have 8 clubs. And those clubs have men's teams, they have junior cricket, and they have women's cricket. And the other requirements are sort of financial and procedural, which we can easily satisfy those. So one of the frustrations has been in sort of this process has been, firstly, we had COVID, which held us back quite a bit. But then sort of expanding the game in a very small nation is difficult. An Arctic nation, we have a pretty hostile climate here.
Yes.
We have no modern day history of playing cricket. So it takes time. And yeah, so one of the frustrations has been that the ICC, for a nation of 385,000 people, they require you to have these 8 clubs, which for a bigger nation, it's nothing. For India, it's obviously nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
but but for a nation that is basically a small city in India, this is actually quite a big achievement for us.
8 clubs, is it?
Level.
8 clubs.
Yeah. So we've been adding a club roughly every 18 months to 2 years. So on that reckoning, we now have about 110, 115 people playing cricket in Iceland.
Nice.
We could hopefully get there within the next 2 years. That is our ambitious aim.
And do you guys also, I'm just throwing it. Do you guys also probably wish to conduct some sort of an exhibition match or a small, a small league of your own? Maybe probably get some names from, which probably you have already done. I've seen your website. You've had people visit, but would you probably have some ex-cricketers as well? Like Tendulkar plays those Legends leagues. Which something like that.
This is also, an aspiration for us. It would be great to have those players coming over. At the moment, we've been focused very much on sort of developing our own cricket internally, so it's strong enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we have leagues. We have 3 leagues. Next season, we have a T10 league, fairly short, which we call the 60-ball shootout. We have T20, which we call the Icelandic Premier League, to differentiate from the IPL.
Okay.
It's the real IPL, the EPL. And then we have a T40 league, which we call the Valhalla Cup. So as we've sort of developed those competitions and as they become stronger and more sort of ingrained in the next couple of years, that's when hopefully we'll start to introduce overseas players into Icelandic cricket. That would be a good time to do that.
How's the audience over there? Like, apart from, of course, if you're managing to field, say 150, how many players did you say? 150
115 roughly.
115 cricketers. How is the audience? Are you getting, say the interest levels of people to watch cricket and consume cricket locally? Like, is it, good enough, or you are still waiting for that vibe, which will trigger something?
Yeah, this is something that gets talked about quite a lot, is who is actually playing in these associate nations. And we're no different to other nations. We are mostly made up of the diaspora of foreign nations at the moment, the Indian people who are in Iceland, the English, the Australians, the South Africans. I think we're made up of 20 different nations in that 115 players. And what we need to do, and what we're aiming to do, and have done to some extent, is to actually start to get cricket into Icelandic schools. Because we see the process of Iceland becoming a cricket nation as being the start point is you encourage all the people here to play who have a history of playing cricket back in their home nation. That's how you grow the game initially. And that can go a certain way, but only so far. What we need to actually develop Iceland into being a cricket nation is for Icelanders to actually play the game.
Yeah.
And you can try and persuade adult Icelanders to play the game. That's difficult. If you can get cricket into Icelandic schools, taught in Icelandic, then that actually can be very effective. So we've done that in the past. We were kind of held back by COVID in terms of further expansion. But from 2023, we're hoping to resume that in Icelandic schools and other sessions as well. And that is sort of our pathway over the next sort of 5 to 10 years to try and make Iceland a cricket playing nation from within.
I hope, you guys make it, because, from purely from purely an outsider point of view, I think, firstly there is a tremendous craze for, for Indians, among Indians, for Iceland as a touristic nation. And a lot of them over last few
very much so
have actually moved there, a a lot of them have moved there as well, which
Yeah.
I know a few who used to live in India who now live in Iceland. So and they love cricket as well. So I think, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean to get players and to get interest, I mean, I think you are on a right path. I think probably hopefully soon we see your team in the mix. And I was seeing in one of your tweets where you mentioned that you're gonna
Mhm.
telecast your leagues on your YouTube directly. Yeah.
Yeah. We do that already. So you can go onto our Iceland YouTube channel, Iceland Cricket, and you can see all of our games from last year. We'll do the same this season in 2023, this time with live commentary as well.
Okay.
So that should be good. And also, the national team are taking part in a competition called the Baltic Cup in Estonia.
Okay.
So it's been 3 years since the national team played any games. So
Okay.
again, COVID
COVID.
put a stopper on that. But before then, we'd played a few national teams. Switzerland we beat in a 50 over ODI, and we played the Czechs and the Hungarians and the Maltese in T20 cricket. So
Nice.
we're going to play in Tallinn in August against
Okay.
Estonia, against Latvia, against Lithuania. So other Estonia are an associate nation. The others are sort of budding associate nations like ourselves. So it's a good test of the level that we're at, the national
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. 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 Correct.
That's one of the main sort of highlights of the upcoming season.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much, David. And I mean, it was, I think, good insights into Icelandic cricket because, to be very honest, purely as a viewer and, you know, our exposure to Iceland cricket is mostly from your tweets. And,
That's right.
so
And
I think we would want to see more of cricket also coming from there. And I'll try to share your YouTube channel also so that people go ahead and see, what sort of cricket is being played there, what is the climatic conditions, and you know, playing in like -4, -5. I mean, you can't imagine. I mean,
Mhm.
for us, people living in Dubai, like 10 degrees is cold for me. So
That's right. I mean, I'm speaking here, it's -7 degrees outside. And throughout the winter, we do play cricket, but we train indoors. We play
oh,
games
okay,
indoors.
okay, okay,
There's
okay.
some fairly large sports halls here where we can do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever actually played a game in snow outside during the summer season. I think the coldest I've played in was about 2 degrees Celsius.
I think you should probably advertise it on YouTube or something for for getting a lot of audience. And I don't know, I'm just throwing an idea. Probably
Yeah.
organize a domestic match in snow and probably advertise it so that let people watch it. That this is the kind of cricket which is played here because we watch all hot games in
Mhm.
hot stadiums in India, in Nagpur. You
Mhm.
know, we don't
Yeah.
know how things
It's
are played over
interesting.
there.
It's interesting you say that because we're going to do a little thing for social media tomorrow on Christmas Eve. It's called the Ice Beach Batting Challenge.
Ah, okay.
And the challenge is, can you survive an over on a sheet of ice on a frozen beach?
Oh,
Can you?
okay, okay. I think, I mean, this episode will air on Monday, but yeah, let people have the fun on Christmas Eve. Let them,
Uh-huh,
this is something
exactly.
which, and I think with Iceland, in cricket, I think you could have a lot of challenges as well. Probably one thing which Iceland could do, which no other nation can do because they don't have time, is you could invent new ways of, new types of cricket because, a nation
Mhm.
where you don't have much time, and climate is the big factor. Apart from, say, a lot of people, I think you could introduce, games like these where, surviving
Yeah.
cold
And
sheet.
I mean, the one advantage we have in the summer is daylight, because
Yeah.
in the middle of June, the sun doesn't really set. So
Yeah.
you can play cricket all through the night if you want. And other sports here, like golf, they have championships here that start at midnight. That's when they tee off and they go through the night. So we could do the same with cricket. And I remember speculating on Twitter that we could actually hold a
I saw
test
that. Yeah,
match
yeah, yeah. I was
where
going to
we just
mention
have
this.
all the sessions going one after the other. So the 15 sessions just carrying on. And you could actually play the game in little more than a day.
You could probably finish your test matches in probably just over 3 days. A 5-day test match.
Less,
I mean,
less because you
less.
just would
Yeah,
have each session one after the other. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And David, who is tweeting all this stuff? I mean, this is something which I wanted to ask. From
Mhm.
the first time when I read all those tweets, I'm just going into my mobile, and I remember back in 2019 World Cup, when Ambati Rayudu was not picked, and the
Mhm.
selectors gave a response that they selected some other player, Vijay Shankar, and they said that they wanted a three-dimensional player, and there were some wonderful tweets, and which came out. And let me just read this out. I mean, he said like Agarwal has 3 professional wickets at 72.33. At least Ambati Rayudu can put away his 3D glasses now. He will only need normal
Right.
glasses to read the document. So, I mean, this wit. The thing is, why I'm saying this is your tweets actually come out pretty much around the incident. So it's not like you are tweeting a week later, or
No, no, no. I
it's
mean,
it's pretty
you have
live.
to be pretty much on the buzzer with Twitter in order to get people's attention. You have to be pretty much immediate. So, I mean, those tweets from 2019, they were done by our previous admin, Kit Harris, who now works for Wisdom.
Okay.
And I've tried to keep up with sort of the same attitude. And it's kind of a persona that we built on Twitter. And it's
No,
the
I mean,
persona of the
it's fun.
Icelander,
It's real
the
fun. I mean,
Iceland.
when you don't include, I saw that I think in one of those test 11s, you didn't include Virat Kohli, and fans went
Yeah,
crazy.
that didn't go down too well. So put in Haraz Hazar, put in was it Vijay Hazari
Yes, yes, yes.
in the middle order, and also as sort of a bowling option. Um, and this went down particularly badly. But if you look at it in tests, you've got number 3, Rao Dravid,
Correct,
number 4, Sachin Tendulkar. Are you going
correct.
to pick Kohli over Sachin Tendulkar? And then you go to number 5. Well, then there's a few options. Kohli would be one, of course. Laxman, maybe. But you go back in time, Hazari averaged 47
Yes,
at the
yes,
start of
of
India's
course.
Test cricket on uncovered wickets. He was
Yes.
a good player.
He was a great player. Yeah, 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 of course.
But of course, the modern fan did not like it very much.
Yeah.
Especially, of course, because somewhat provocatively, Kohli was put as 12th man, the head water boy. So,
Yeah.
that.
But do you get those? I mean, because I know the nation I come from. We love our cricket so much, and you know they are demigods to us. I mean, probably even bigger than gods. And if you
Yeah.
don't include one of those, have you got those nasty fan DMs in your
Oh, too many to
too
mention.
many of
You
them?
know,
Yeah, I expected.
I remember the previous admin, Kit Harris, he posted one about Rashid Khan, in
Yeah.
one of the previous World Cups, where
Yes.
he conceded more than 100
Yes.
and somewhat sarcastically celebrated the first century of the World Cup going to
Yes.
Rashid Khan. We received all sorts of death threats following that and abuse.
But I think
So,
apart from the Iceland cricket, I think it's only England's Barmy Army who are actually being a little bit of, who are being little funny on Twitter. Otherwise, no
yeah.
offense again, of course. I mean, BCCI is only posting cricket scores, and so is
Mhm.
anyone else. So a little bit of
You know, I
entertainment. Yeah, I mean, it's
I
it's
can under,
nice.
I can understand why national boards are like this. They have sponsors,
Of course, yeah.
and they don't want to upset people. But we've decided that one of the major ways in which we can gain exposure is to actually reach out to the fans recognize that cricket is a game. It's meant
Yes.
to be fun. It's meant to be entertaining. We can give information about matches, statistics, fixtures, and we do during the Icelandic summer. But we don't want to lose that spirit of cricket being about entertainment.
Yeah.
We don't want to stop poking fun a little at at how seriously some people take it. And there's never anything nasty in our tweets. It's only sort of
Totally.
a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of the Icelandic attitude of the underdog and the outsider, all of that.
I think, the ability to actually, say what you want to, because I think a lot of us, I mean, what you guys write, what you write in your tweets is something which a lot of us want to say, but you have quietly, passed it off in a tweet. So, it could be, it could rub people the wrong way, but, all of us don't have to agree with you. And a lot of us do agree with you as well. A lot of us do agree with you as well.
What was quite interesting about the recent Pakistan getting chopped up and sugared like marmalade tweet, that we could go to Pakistan and gladly lose 3-0 to even things up. We had many Pakistani fans actually congratulating us for saying that.
I mean, there was one of those tweets which read the whole lineup, and Inzamam ul Haq, Inzamam ul Haq's nephew, Inzamam ul Haq's, I mean, it's funny. It's really funny. It's really creative, and I totally agree where this comes from. I totally agree. From the pun point of view, and I think if you get that pun, yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you read such tweets like the mom's nephew, friend, and another family member. So I don't know. I can't even imagine what you would have got in your DMs. But yeah, as an outsider, if I look at it, if I'm a Pakistani, will I be offended? Yeah, if I think of it that way, I could be. But you take it, with, if you just read it as a tweet and see the fun behind it, it's lovely. And I think you're getting a lot of attention for that.
We spend quite a few tweets also mocking ourselves and our lack of a place in the cricketing world, our lack of ability. So it's not just about other teams. It's also, we poke fun at everyone.
So lastly, David, coming to an end to my podcast, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for being a part of this. And because I love cricket and I love talking about cricket, and because, again, as I told you, I'm not associated with any brand. So you don't have to, tie your lips and, tie your tongue and, not say things. So, this is totally unfiltered and I love the conversation. Probably someday we discuss more deep into cricket. And, last thoughts before closing in, are you going to invite some international commentators as well to cover your domestic leagues? Probably that could get you a lot of audience.
Well, we would love to if we can afford them. That's always the main thing. So we do have a sponsor for the national team, Sports Ed Chain, who are into sort of fan engagement and NFTs. But we are looking for sort of more sponsorship of domestic tournaments. That is needed. We were in talks with a few people at the moment. If we can get that, then we can kind of fund things like bringing commentators in from overseas potentially. So that would be fantastic.
Just to probably give more exposure to your cricket, that's it. Just getting Nasir Hussain for a day to have fun with the lads, and that's it. Something like that.
That would be absolutely fantastic. And when we've toured England as the national team in the past, when we played Switzerland in England, we had the New Zealand pace bowler from the past, Ian O'Brien.
Yes.
Our mentor for the day. And we've had other people, supporters of Iceland Cricket from England, Marcus Trescothick, Hoggard, Tino Best from the West Indies. These have all sort of been people who have briefly sort of been part of Iceland Cricket and wished us well and supported us. So I think what you're saying is actually a very good way of actually helping to not only develop cricket in Iceland, but also further raise our profile, which is important.
Yeah. And thank you very much, David. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Part of this podcast. I probably will release it soon as I get time after Christmas to do editing and stuff.